We have been talking a lot over the last year or so about the emergence of so-called fake news. Sometimes it's being peddled as clickbait simply to make money. Other times it is deliberate misinformation being pushed by partisans or Russians or even the White House itself. But just because we saw a lot of right-wing fake news about Hillary Clinton murdering Seth Rich or running a child sex ring out of a pizza restaurant in DC, that does not mean the political left is immune. In fact, if anything, Chaz, it seems that they are now the ones who are spreading and falling for fake news the most.
Yeah, recently there's been a lot of attention paid to Louise Mensch, a British Tory politician who famously held Rupert Murdoch's feet to the fire during the News of the World inquiry before quitting Parliament and helping Murdoch launch a news website. These days, she runs a blog and tweets prolifically about all things Russian, and she's been getting increasingly carried away. BuzzFeed did a count from her Twitter feed 6 weeks ago, and at that point, she'd already accused 210 people and organisations of being under Russian government influence, including claims that Russia funded the protests in Ferguson, Missouri, Anthony Weiner was set up by Russian hackers, the Boston Marathon bombings were planned by Russia, Steve Bannon is a Russian agent of influence, and so is Sean Hannity, Jeremy Corbyn, Jeff Sessions, Rudy Giuliani, Betsy DeVos, and Bernie Sanders.
Maybe not Bernie.
In fact, Conservative troll Milo Yiannopoulos claims that Louise Mensch told him she promised to take the Trump opposition so violently off into conspiracy and lunacy he'd be guaranteed a second term. Now, Milo is a self-confessed troll. You cannot trust him at all. But the point is, it's very hard to know what's real and what's not. Take this tweet from Media Watch host Paul Barry. No idea if this is true, claim that Trump impeachment process has begun. And then he linked to a blog entry by Louise Mensch and one of her compadres, Claude Taylor, alleging that the Supreme Court has notified Trump the case for his impeachment has begun. Now that is the fakest of fake news. That's not even how the process works. And it's Paul Barry's job to see through fake news, but even he's passing it on, albeit with a lot of doubt. And blogs like Patriobotics, which was that one, and the Palmer Report fool journalists, politicians, all of us over and over again.
What are you doing picking a fight with Paul Barry?
I am an idiot.
Well, for more on this, Jason Reifler is with us from Exeter in the United Kingdom. He is one of the leading researchers in the spread of misinformation, misperceptions, and the way that media organisations like fact checkers can try and combat all of this. Jason, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Is fake news an extension of partisan and biased news media, or is there something new and different, do you think?
One of the things that separates the sort of new breed of fake news outlets from more traditional hyper-partisan type news sources is that they exist purely for profit, that these are brand new websites that pop out of the blue, and that their main goal is to try and generate ad revenue, and so to try and bring as many visitors to the site as possible and generate as many clicks and web traffic. So there are certainly hyper-partisan websites that publish things that aren't correct. If we think back to the 2016 election, Breitbart.com would certainly be one that we would look at. But the fake news is something that is slightly different, even if in form it might seem really familiar.
And Jason, do you think people spread fake news because they actually believe it, or they want to believe it, or because they just sort of subscribe to the subtext, Hillary's crooked or Trump's in bed with Russia?
So I think that the answer is some of all of the above. So there are certainly people who believe it, but there are also people who read it and may share it on Facebook because they just like that it says something bad about the opponent, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not. And there are some people who likely go to it because they just think it, even if it's not true, it spreads a broader truth that they want to believe. But at root, there are a lot of people who genuinely believe the fake news. I think we all have, or at least Americans like me, have friends or former Facebook friends who would post a lot about fake news, and they certainly seem sincere to me.
Jason, what about in the case of Louise Mensch and these Russia Sphere websites? Are they for real, or are they just trolling?
these are sites that are designed to draw in as many people to the website as possible, and to try and generate viral content so that lots of people click through. And so a lot of the stories are just simply made up. What they think will be able to get traction on Facebook or on other forms of social media. So the paid protester story being a really famous one, that all the people who were protesting were paid by George Soros, and that there are thousands of people who are on $80,000 a year salary jobs or retainers to be able to protest whenever George Soros wants, which is, of course, obviously and outrageously false. But a lot of fake news content is more subtle, which is it takes existing stories or little clips that were basically steals from other websites, and then publishes outrageous headlines or titles to them in order to try and get people to click through.
And from what you understand, are progressives or conservatives any more or less likely to spread or fall for fake news?
There's no reason to think that ideology would play a large role in willingness to believe or spread fake news. Now, it may be the case that there is, but in the research that I've done so far to date with Brendan Nyhan, we have not seen that.
OK, but Jason, what about when they're actually confronted with fact checks debunking false claims and reports? Are people actually persuadable, or at that point do they just double down?
We know that sometimes corrective information will spark a backfire, and sometimes it won't. But even in those instances where corrective information improves people's accuracy beliefs, it can also, at the same time, erode their trust in the media or their trust in official sources. So there are still pernicious effects when you're correcting people for the sort of political beliefs that they want to hold.
And finally, Jason, what's your sniff test? How would you suggest people tell if a news article that appears in their Facebook feed is dubious?
So I think there are a couple of simple things to look at. One is just, what's the source? Is it coming from a reputable source, or is it not coming from a reputable source? Is it a major news organization that you've heard of, like ABC in Australia or BBC here in the UK where I am? Or is it from some strangely named website? If it's from a strangely named website, then the chances that it's wrong, I think, certainly go up. Fact-checking is out there. And a lot of the most dubious, most outrageous claims are things that fact-checkers actively check and write about. And so put the claim into Google and go to one of the reputable fact-checkers and see what they have to say.
Jason Reifler, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.